Welcome to Highline Excel class number 39. Hey, if you want to download this workbook and follow along, click on my YouTube channel, then click on my college website link. You can download the workbook, Week 7 Business 214. If you're enrolled in the class, just go to our Week 7 website. Now, we're talking about array formulas, and we got to talk about the third important point. First, we talked about how arrays can do operations on arrays or ranges. Then we talked about the fact that there were array functions. This third aspect, we want to talk about the fact that if you enter a range of values or an array into a function argument that is expecting a single value, you can convert that function into an array formula. Of course, you must use Control-Shift-Enter. Now, we already saw this with the text function in the last video. But the interesting thing is, you will return an array of values always. But if the function is in one cell, it will show just the first value. If the function is in a formula or function that is expecting an array, it'll use the whole array. Let's see what I mean. Here's basically the same thing we did in our last video. We have criteria January and 2009, but our data set right here has serial dates. So what do we do? In the last video, we used the text function. Sorry about that. I'm jumping all over the place. We used the text function. We did SUMPRODUCT. Here's the text function. There's the whole range of dates down there, and we converted those serial numbers to this number format, MMM, which will give us a JAN or a FEB, and the YYYY gives us the year from the serial number, right? And then we said from that text, is that equal to these two criteria concatenated together? And then we did the double negatives to convert the trues and falses to ones and zeros. Now, here is what I am talking about in this video. The text function is expecting a single value, but we put an array, a range in our case, or we could put an array there. As soon as you do that, you convert the text function from delivering a single value into delivering an array of values. Now, I want to highlight this and copy it because I want to show you the difference between what it's doing inside the sum product here, where it delivers the whole array, and what happens if you put it in a single cell. Control-C, escape. I'm going to scroll down here, and right here I'm going to hit F2 equals Control-V, and now I'm going to Control-Shift-Enter. It just gives us the first value, which happens to be that one right there. If you highlight this, put it in edit mode and highlight it and hit the F9 key, you can see the whole array is really there. But the fact that we put it into one cell, it just shows us the first value. If we come back up here and highlight all this, because the sum product can handle arrays, when we hit F9, we can see that the whole array is there. And of course, when we compare it to here, it will deliver trues and falses. So the point of all this is put a range or array into a function that's expecting a single value. Forget it. You just created an array formula. Now, that's counting. In our last video, we also did summing. Let's see, look at this sum product here. We did the same thing, but here we just included that last range. So that's an example with the text. Let's look at a few other examples of situations where you put a range of values into a function that's expecting a single value. Now, let's do it the long way first, just so we can see how it works. Here's a date. Here's some part numbers. And our goal is to take each one of these part numbers and look up the price. So right here we need $25, and right here we need $25 too. Well, that sounds like the perfect use for the VLOOKUP. Highlight the range in the active cell, type equals VLOOKUP. Click on the lookup value, comma. You go get the whole table, F4 to lock it, going down, comma, the column index 1, 2, so we're going to put a 2. And comma, we're looking up an exact match, so put 0 for false. Close parentheses and Control-Enter. Control-Enter just populates all the cells. And then we come down here and Alt equals. Okay? What we had to do, though, was add an extra column. And a lot of times you don't want to do that. You just want one formula that will actually look up the values here and then add them all together. Because really our goal is just to add all whatever the sales total is for this series of records. Now I always have little data sets here so it can fit on the screen, but obviously a huge data set, this would be, Now instead of having that whole column, we're going to go ahead and create our formula here using the SUMIF function. Equals SUMIF. And now the way SUMIF works is it wants a range, which means a range of cells, a single criteria, and then a sum range of cells. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the lookup table, the first column, that has the criteria, the 3 possibilities, comma. I'm going to skip over the criteria for now, type comma, and now the sum range. Now for SUMIF, you can go ahead and highlight the 3 cells in the end part of this table. But for SUMIF, you never need to do that because the number of cells to sum for sum range is determined by the first argument. The range, however many cells there, if there's 3 cells here, it's automatically going to do 3 cells there. Now let's close parentheses and talk about criteria. Expecting a single value, but look what we're going to do. Highlight this right here. So what it's going to do for criteria is it'll create an array. It'll look up this one and return $25 for both of those records. Now I'm going to Control-Shift-Enter. You can see it gives us our 25. But if you hit F2 and try and evaluate this here, the formula evaluator is not going to like it. I'm going to hit F9. It's going to give us a bunch of zeros. So we're going to try and trick the formula evaluator because really this should be returning 25, 10, 10, 5, 25. I'm going to click in the cell and use Alt equals to create my sum function. And then inside of this, I'm going to do my SUMIF. I'm going to get the range, comma, the criteria, comma, and the sum range, close parentheses. Now I'm going to Control-Shift-Enter. So now I've put this SUMIF inside of a sum. Right now the SUMIF is trying to generate an array of values, but when we use the sum and Control-Shift-Enter, it will know that that range of values or that array of values is there, and it will add them. Control-Shift-Enter, and we got $75. Now let's run Formula Evaluator. Formula autoing here. Evaluate. In 2003, it's under the Tools menu. The keyboard shortcut is Alt-TUF. And now when I hit, you can see it's underlined this. When I click Evaluate, we can see the actual values. 25, 10, 10, 5, 25. Just like we got here for our VLOOKUP, but all in one cell. Click Evaluate, and we see our 75. Now, I'm going to put it in edit mode and copy just the SUMIF part. Because, of course, we have our SUMPRODUCT. And if you don't like doing the arrays, you can just slap it inside of a SUMPRODUCT. Close parentheses. Now Control-Enter. And sure enough. So that's that SUMIF was not expecting an array. But as soon as we put it there, it becomes an array formula. Let's look at another example. This is a very important example for functions that are expecting single values, but you give it an array. Now I better scroll up here. We're trying to find the median, the max, and the min, but we have a criterion. Our criterion is Joe. So we want to look at just Joe's values and calculate the median, max, and min. Now the median one in particular, the formula we're going to use a median and an if. This is a well-known construct for aggregate functions that look at a bunch of values when you have a condition. Because we could actually build a pivot table or subtotals like this and subtotal on Joe, or do a pivot table and show Joe and do like standard deviation or average or something like that. But there's not a median. So this sometimes you have to use this type of formula. The way it works is we do equals median. And instead of just highlighting this whole range, we can't do that because we only want some of them. So we say inside the median if, and this logical test is expecting a single value. But watch this. We're going to put a whole range of values. And not only that, but we're going to say, is it equal to Joe? Right? Right now, if we highlight this and hit F9, we know it gives us trues and falses. Control Z. OK. Logical test, comma, and then the value if true, you give it the whole range. What it does is any true here will then extract the right value from here, and we'll get only the sales numbers for Joe in this case. All right? And then we can just close parentheses on the if, because we do not need the value of false, and then close parentheses on the median. And now, if this is an array, because this range of values is in the if where it's expecting a single value, so now it's an array formula. Control Shift and Enter. And so the median is a 4.5. And if you don't believe it, you could go ahead and calculate it, and sure enough, it is 4.5. Max, the same thing, equals max. If this whole range right here is equal to Joe, then what do we want? This range right here. Close parentheses, close parentheses. Now I'm going to highlight this little thing here because that can be used in other functions. Control Shift Enter, and we calculate the max. How about this one? Equals min. Control V. Control Shift Enter. Now there are other possible ways to do this. But one thing that the if does is that it won't give you any zeros. If you were to use some other functions that got ones and zeros when you're calculating min or max or average or median, those zeros might affect the actual calculation. So doing this construct with an if, that criterion, then that range is very handy because it won't deliver any zeros. The min, oops, I got a value arrow because I did not do Control Shift Enter. F2, Control Shift Enter. And sure enough, the bottom value is 1. So that's an important idea for functions, ranges, and array formulas. Let's scroll down. We have another awesome example here of count unique records. Now we have a list here. There's a Tom, a Sue, a repeat, a blank, a not repeat, not repeat. So we really have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that we should get. Now we're going to use SUMPRODUCT and the if and COUNTIF. Now COUNTIF is going to be the interesting one here because just like our SUMIF, COUNTIF has criteria, and it's expecting a single value. But we're going to give it an array. And so that'll make it an array formula. Now, we're going to build this in pieces because it'll be easier to understand. We're going to type equals SUMPRODUCT to start. We're going to have some arrays of trues and falses, and then some arrays of numbers to add, which will add up to a unique count. Remember, we're shooting for 5 here. Now, the COUNTIF, I mentioned that before. That's what we're going to use here, so we're going to start with that. It's expecting a range of values, so we highlight this, comma. And the criteria, it's expecting a single value. But watch this. We're going to highlight all these. Now, I'm going to close parentheses on this. And this is now an array because this argument is an range. Let's just highlight it and hit F9 and see what it gives us. F9. 1, 2, 1, 2. Oh, that's because there's only one Tom. There's 2 Sues. There's 1 Sue. There's 2 Sues. So because, I'm going to Control Z here, because we put this criteria here, it's asking for all of them. So every time it sees a Sue, it's going to give 2 every single time. Now, how are we going to convert a 2 and a 2 to show us just 1? The way we're going to do it is we're going to take this array of values, and before the COUNTIF, we're going to say 1 divided by. What does that do? Well, let's highlight this. We can already think about it. If there's a 2 here and a 2 here, 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. 1 divided by 0.5 and 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. And 0.5 plus 0.5 is 1. If there was 3 Sues, we'd get a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And you add them all together, and it's 1. It's a very clever trick. I actually did not think up this trick. This is a totally cool thing I got from the Mr. Excel message board. Let's highlight this. F9. And you can see it got the 1 for Tom. You got the 0.5 for Sue and another 0.5 for Sue. So then the sum product will add them. Oh, but there's a problem. Divide by 0, right? Because the 1 divided by this empty cell, which COUNTIF is thinking of as a 0, you can't do that. So we have to fix that. Control Z. Now watch this. This is pretty clever. This range right here is looking here and picking that up. We're going to ampersand that range, ampersand, and then double quote, double quote. What this does, this is a range of values here. When we say please join that, that means every single one of the values will have a blank at the end. Now, what does that do technically? It means that Excel will think that it is text. It will no longer be a 0. It'll be a blank. And then a blank, 1 divided by a blank, doesn't give you the divide by 0 error. Let's highlight all of this and hit the F9 key. And sure enough, you can see that we don't get a divide by 0 error. Control Z. Now, let's put our cursor at the N, close parentheses, and then Control Enter. Remember, you don't have to Control Shift because Enter because this is sum product. Oh, but that's the wrong answer. What's happening is the construct we've done up here by making it a blank, it's then counting that. That's why when we highlighted all this and hit our F9 key, we saw 1 for the blank, which is right there. So Control Z. We're going to have to do a second array that's going to ask, tell me when there's not a blank. So we have an array 1. We can just come to the end. And so we're going to add a second array here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to say this range, or in, well, let's just do this. This range. Oh, and I got a 1 there. That range right there. Ooh, and I got a 1 there too. I better put a comma. This range right there, we want to check and ask, is it not blank? So I'm going to do less than, greater than, and then double quote, double quote. Right now, this will give us some trues and falses if I highlight this and hit the F9 key, but that's not what we want. Control Z. We want it to convert it to 1s and 0s. So we'll say double negative, open parentheses, and then close parentheses around this. Now we get our 1s and 0s. And we get I'll hit F9. And right here, oh, I better Control Z. If I do another F9 here, I've wrecked my formula. Control Z. But anyway, that 0 right now will be 0 multiplied by the 1 we saw for the blank. And it will eliminate that 1 count for the blank. I'm going to Control Z and then Control Enter. So that formula right there, count unique records. Again, this video is about how we put ranges where single values are expected in a function. And hit Enter. Now we have another great example. All right, down here, boomerang maximum time aloft. Hey, boomerang competition, that's a sport. And one of the events is to see how long your boomerang can stay in the air. Well, for that event, each thrower gets 5 throws. Here's their score, 35 seconds, 42, 43, 16, and 22. We have to sum the top 3 and then rank them. Now, for summing the top 3, let's see if I can change the size just a little bit here. Oh, we could use the large function. We've seen the large function in this class. Large function, we would tell it the array here of values. And then k is either 1 for the max, 2 for the second longest, and 3 for the third longest. Well, it's expecting a single k here, but watch this. We're going to use our array syntax and just type in curly bracket 1, 2, 3, curly bracket. Now, this is an array going into this place, this argument that's expecting a single value. But guess what? This function is an exception. It will no problem handle that 1, 2, 3. If I Control Enter, oh, it's only going to show me the first largest. I'm going to hit F2. And as we mentioned earlier, that if you do have an array, a function that's returning an array, and in this case it's returning 3 values, these 3 largest values, If you do it in one cell, it shows just the one cell. But watch this. If I highlight this and hit the F9 key, you can see that it's actually turning an array, but it's returning an array, but only showing the first 43. Control Z. I'm just going to put the sum function around it. And that will handle it even without doing Control Shift Enter. And that the large and the small function can handle arrays typed in like that. And so there it is. And then I double click and send it down. And then there's a ranking formula here that ranks them. Okay, so that is our last formula for the 4 videos on arrays. One last warning about array formulas. Hey, in large spreadsheets, if you have lots of array formulas, man, it can slow the calculating time down, sometimes very considerably. I have a video that shows you some tips for what to do when you have large spreadsheets, and it has some arrays in there also. All right, that's it for week 7. We'll see you next week.